And I'm sitting here with Nick, and I know that we chat online a lot about different topics, different content. You'll blog about something, I'll comment on it, and vice versa, and things that are going on. But why don't you introduce yourself to this audience and tell us about your area of focus and of interest?
Sure. So I'm Nick Brattoli. I'm an Office Servers and Services MVP. So SharePoint Office 365, I do all of that stuff. I am the community manager for CollabTalk.community, which we're a website that does all kinds of content. We throw conferences, things like that. We're actually starting a new service called Microjobs that I'll probably want to talk about a lot.
Yeah, is that launching? Is that do you have a launch date for that?
I don't think we have an exact date for it. I think we're looking for March for that. Most of the tech work is done now. There's just lots of little dotting our I's, crossing our T's.
It's a great idea, and I know that Mark is waiting for me to provide him with some info, so I'll have a few things up on there. So, depending on when you're watching this video, definitely go to collab365.community, find the microjobs stuff. It's just a great resource for experts out in the community, and that you can go and if you need help, Nick, I'll let you describe some of the things that are already in there. I mean, there's some great services.
Yeah, basically it's a bunch of little self-contained projects or jobs that you can offer, which we are looking for more sellers as well. Something that you can repeat and just do in a couple hours of your time, or maybe you've got a course that you've recorded or something that you want to sell, to where organizations or even individuals can come in and have you do those jobs for them. They don't need to hire someone for a full year for a project that can be done in a couple days. Right.
Like a great example might be like hiring an MVP, a well-known MVP, to come in and do like a governance assessment. That it's like an 8-hour assessment of your environment, or infrastructural assessment of your environment.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. Or they'll write you a document, or look at something that you've got going on. Here's a paragraph on how to solve it. That'll be X amount of dollars, and then you can handle it yourself from there. You don't have to hire somebody for a whole year to do something like that. Right. So we're going to launch that in March. In addition to that, that's just what I do for fun. In addition to that, I actually have a day job. I'm an independent consultant. I work on a lot of different projects in SharePoint and Office 365. Right now, I'm doing a pile of migrations and everything that leads up to those. So that's probably a good topic to talk about today.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what you're doing with your day job. And I always like to ask, what are you passionate about? What is probably the most exciting thing within the ecosystem stuff you're working on that Microsoft has announced? I mean, because you're writing more and more and talking to people around Teams, and there's a lot of webinars and a lot of articles and stuff on that topic. But kind of what are you passionate about? Migration.
Yeah, so I'm super passionate about migration. So the migrations are a necessary evil because all these organizations do see all of this new stuff that's coming out, and they are starting to move their old stuff into it. And there's lots of growing pains. Some people are still on 2007, 2010, and are trying to get it out to the cloud or a hybrid solution or something. And it takes a lot of work to get to that point before you can start doing all that cool new stuff. And some of that cool new stuff's not out yet. So in the meantime, I do like to help organizations get ready for when that stuff comes out so that their data will fit the new models. And I am passionate about that. That's really fun, trying to figure out, okay, we're here, now we have to go all the way to here. And how do we do that? And it's different for everybody.
Yeah, so if you're interacting with customers, I mean, how are customers reacting to the rate of innovation, so the number of changes that happen? I mean, it's a popular topic, and I know, it comes up a lot of just, how organizations are handling change management in this evergreen state of SharePoint and Office 365.
So it depends on the organization. Some of them are much better than others. Some of them were a few years behind and are comfortable doing that. So they're coming up, maybe they're going to migrate to 2016 now, and maybe dip their toes in hybrid. So not everyone is adopting the brand new stuff the second it comes out. You see more of that in the community where people are pushing that kind of thing and driving it. So you'll have MVPs and others that are in the community that are just, they're trying to make it happen. But organizations, I think, are still kind of hesitant to deal with that kind of fast change management because it may not jive well with their current change management processes. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the hybrid discussion that has happened over the last few years, where it was Microsoft pushing cloud, and the community was saying, it's like, look, our customers and our companies have spent years of building out infrastructure, making investments in these on-prem pieces. We can't just flip a switch and move over to these things. It's going to take time, if it makes sense at all. I mean, around that. So it's more of a conversation. Microsoft, I think come back around and recognized, just that it's the reality is that hybrid is not, for a lot of organizations, not just it's a transitory state, but is actually can be a permanent state for some of those organizations.
Yeah, some of them, they're not going to want to even put their data anywhere near the cloud, even though you and I know there's all kinds of great security features in the cloud, probably way more robust than anything you can do on-prem for the most part. But some of them still want to have physical control of their data. So some of it's just never going to leave on premises. Even if they put everything else in the cloud and start using all the new stuff immediately, they want to hold that other stuff in their hands. So
for some it's like a control issue. I mean, but there's the reality is that, like, there's a lot of, if you've got and build out your dashboard, your instrumentation, all of the your operations of your environment, and now there's these cloud services which may not fit in, it may not roll up in a way that you're going to be able to provide that level of control or insight, into what's going on. It's going to take time for a lot of these third-party vendors and for you to go rebuild your dashboarding. And look, there's a lot of factors that go with that move. For a small company, so my company's just 5 people, it was a no-brainer just to be 100% cloud. No
exactly.
Why would I go do any kind of on-prem anything,
Yeah.
So, and there are some organizations that have that approach, that even they might be larger, but they say, you know what, let's just get rid of the server footprint altogether. Let's move everything across.
Yeah, I see the same thing. So small businesses, they jump right into the cloud because maybe they couldn't afford SharePoint on premises back when that was the only thing that there was. But anyone, it's very easy to afford Office 365, no matter what kind of licenses you need. It's pretty nice to be able to mix and match that stuff. And you're right, for big organizations, I do see them adopting fast too, but they're not doing it necessarily company-wide all at once. They're taking baby steps. Usually IT or marketing or some department is going to drive that, and they're going to adopt it first, and then it's got to slowly spread out to everyone else. And sometimes that can take a year or so. It just depends.
So with the new announcements and stuff, what do you think is it going to have the biggest effect, the impact on businesses? I mean, there's so much that's coming out, and there's hot topics, as you point out, from the expert community that are out there. But if with your customers, where do you think that we'll actually see, that will have the biggest impact of what Microsoft has released in the last 6 to 12 months, or is talking about releasing with the next version?
So from what I've seen, organizations are on board. Some of them are a little skeptical, but they are on board with Teams and the new way of grouping everything using the Office 365 groups with the new modern experience. People are excited about that. It's shiny and new, and it's actually easier to use. So that's pretty cool that people are going into that. But the thing is, it's going to retake a massive restructuring of data and the way people think about it. A lot of organizations on older versions may not have been using metadata already to the extent they need to be using it. So to go from an old sub-site, everything hierarchy structure to hub sites with modern team sites and groups, and it's more of a flat structure. When you're doing that migration or making that transition, you have to restructure all your data and maybe even redo some of that taxonomy along the way. And that can be a massive undertaking depending on how big you are, what kind of expertise you have, how well your governance plan is. So there's just a lot of work to get there, even though I think organizations are excited to start jumping into the new stuff.
Yeah, and so what's for organizations that are excited but have all of that? I mean, do you get involved with helping them to kind of to build out pilots and trial some of this stuff and experiment and roll that in? Or
yeah, so when I say I'm doing migrations right now, I don't mean opening up a third-party solution and copying one document to another. I do that eventually, But that's the easy part. The rest of it is doing exactly that. You build maybe a proof of concept for either an Office 365 tenant or SharePoint 2016 or maybe 2019 when that starts coming out later this year. Then you build a small version of that, maybe migrate a little bit of their data, show them kind of how it could be restructured, show them their metadata, here's what it's like now. You have to do a full audit of all your stuff, right? So you've got to see where you are, maybe make a proof of concept of where you want to be, and then you're going to have to change course along the way because maybe some of that isn't going to translate like you thought it would.
Right.
And that's probably 85% of these migrations that I'm doing is all this back and forth, trying to make the old data fit into the new stuff in a usable way still, though.
Well, and it's not just making it fit too. It's then because it's also then saying it's like, yeah, if you were to do everything in the new platform the way that you were doing it the old way, it may not all map, and you got to figure out what stuff fits. But then there's also all of this new stuff that was not possible over here. And you just made me think of so Dan Holm and I did a keynote of the European SharePoint conference in Copenhagen a few years back, and we shared this very simple graphic where it started off and it said, the one slide, huge letters said, like SharePoint doesn't matter. There was a gasp, literally a gasp from the audience at that. And then we kind of showed this process. And what you said, it's like you have to know, here's what we're trying to achieve. The business needs to achieve, which is, regardless of technology, what's achieved. Then here's what the platform can actually do. Then when you do that migration of the planning, and it's talking with teams and understanding what the business is trying to do, what the systems currently do today, and what's possible as it moves over, and you have those conversations. There's always like, and now here's what's possible, around that, and people's eyes get kind of open to look. If you just do what you're doing today in the new platform, you're going to be using a smaller percentage of the capability of the platform. And you have to, as part of that change, you have to go back and look at, are we even doing this the best way possible? What other things can we unlock?
Yeah, it's kind of a garbage in, garbage out situation too. So a big part of this planning is cleanup. There's some stuff you need to archive probably, maybe even get rid of entirely. That's kind of a big thing. So if you're just moving all your data over, it's going to look almost the same. So you have a slightly different interface. But also, if you're going into the cloud, you lose some of the benefits of having server stuff. So if you're going to do this, you need to think of where your end goal is. Get rid of the stuff you don't need, move over the stuff you do, and some stuff might need to be rebuilt. So you might have some old workflows or some old info path forms. Maybe you should take this opportunity, this disruption that this migration is going to cause to redo some of that. Maybe you should remake it in Power Apps and Flow. It might be a little bit of work.
Dynamic and easier to change in the future, right? Yeah,
exactly. So take the opportunity of any disruption, not just if you're doing a migration. If you ever get a disruption, you should take the opportunity to improve something along the way. Right. And those are usually a good candidate for that.
Right. Yeah. There's I don't know if you're much of a Deming fan. It's like watched a couple of videos of him in the late 90s. Was working on my MBA. So I can hear his gravelly voice. If you're not familiar with W. Edwards Deming, and he's the kind of the father of the whole just in time manufacturing. A lot of the theories that are behind that, he helped go in and rebuild. Sorry, I'm soapbox, but rebuild Japan after World War II, and it's why that the highest quality award you can receive in Japan in industry is the Deming Award. But he always talked about constantly optimizing the system, and that disruption. And that's what it is. It's an opportunity to go in and optimize to improve. That's that operational mindset of, hey, we're doing fantastic. It's like, all right, how can we do more fantastic?
And don't just wait on a disruption to do some of this stuff. This should be in your governance plan. Your governance should be improving as technology improves, because now you have a lot more things you can do around that. And so, you should always be optimizing, maybe not to the point where you're messing up your daily operations. But you should be looking at things. You should be monitoring, getting reporting every now and then. and making corrections along the way, or you end up 5 years down the road with an exploded environment that's going to take a whole lot of money and time to fix.
And fewer people are using as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because your business requirements don't sit static; they change and they evolve. The technology certainly constantly evolves and improves, and there are advances around there. So you have to have that mindset of looking at reviewing. Hey, this is good for now, but we're aware this is coming out. Let's take a look at this again in 3 months and 6 months, and then it'll make sense to make a change there. Yeah, I mean, that has to be part of that change management, that governance mindset.
Especially if you're in an industry that involves compliance, or if you're involved with the EU at all.
Right. Yeah,
you really have to deal with all that. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So it's good to stay ahead of the curve on those things, but not so far ahead where, nothing can get done ever.
Exactly. Well, Nick, how can people get in touch with you if they want to come find you and find out more about what you do?
So I pretty much live on collab365.community. So it's very easy to find me there. I do a show every 2 weeks called Under the Hood. Sometimes I'm on the live show. I think I'm going to be more of a producer role there from now on. So I'm easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for me, Nick Brattoli. I pretty much live on the internet. I mean, as you can tell, I live in this giant outer space room with floating office windows.
Wave your hands. Show us the your force field.
My force field, that's to keep me from suffocating in space. So anyway, I live and breathe this stuff. I'm really easy to find.
Excellent. And hey, can you answer, like, are we doing another one of these 24-hour conferences? So Nick's team, if you're not familiar with this, what is now the Collab 365, and I know the company's evolved and that platform's been out there a couple of years, but years ago was the first ones to do it. They did the SP24 event, which is now just the global conference, and running that 24 hours. And I just like to see Andy Talbot not sleeping for 24 hours.
He's insane. Yeah, I go to sleep, halfway through and wake back up. We want to. It's so much work, and right after we're like, let's never do one of these again. But then like a month later, we're like, I can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah.
I think it's in the works. We already have a lot on our plate, so maybe once Microjobs gets up and running, we'll talk further about it. But we love doing those, and I think more are in the future.
Very cool. Well, Nick, thanks a lot for your time. It was great chatting with you, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
Thanks.